Hi everybody. Hi everybody, it's your friend Daniel Hutchins. We are out here, down here in the basement. Yep, the basement. Do you know who else loves to live in the basements? I'll give you a hint. Remember back on the episode on Adult Swim on the Brak Show? You know, the Brak Show from Adult Swim? You know. There was a time where there was an episode where we had none other than our friend Space Ghost. Yeah, Space Ghost. Yeah, Space Ghost. Yeah, Space Ghost. Yeah, Space Ghost. He loves to hang out in the basement. And not just anyone's basement, Brak's basement. You know, at his mom and his dad's house. You know, his dad is a doll, and, you know, he's a doll like dad that, you know, looks very short. He just loves to read a newspaper. And then there's Brak's mom, wears an apron and is a housewife. And then there's Zorak. And then later there was Clarence, you know, the big fat purple kid. And then there was the neighbor Thundercleese, the robot. And then there was, Brak's brother, you know, the one that's in the red. You don't see him that often, because every time he walks across screen, he farts. Yeah, very minor. You don't really see him that often, or anyway. But what we're talking about is Space Ghost. Yep, on the episode of the Brak Show, when they're like, oh, who do we have in the basement but Space Ghost? You guys want to know why was Space Ghost in the basement? Well, I'm telling you right here, right now, in the basement, in the library, right here in the University of New Mexico. So, count this as a Eric special. Yeah, it's an Eric special. You know, an overdue Eric special from yours truly, the Hutchins Hut. Okay, you want to know why was Space Ghost in the basement? Well, if you remember on the Brak Show, you know, which is the spin-off of Space Ghost, Space Ghost was in the basement. You want to know why Space Ghost was in the basement? I'll tell you, okay? It's gonna blow your mind, okay? The reason why Space Ghost was in the basement of Brak's house was... Okay, he lost his job. Yeah, he lost his job. Yeah, I know, right? He lost his job. Yeah, so, yeah. That's why Space Ghost was on the basement, or was living in the basement at Brak's house. Because you remember, Space Ghost happened before the Brak Show. Again, because it's Adult Swim. The reason why Space Ghost was in Brak's basement is because he lost his job. Yes, he lost his job. And because Space Ghost lost his job, he had to bunker down in the basement. And if you also remember, he was complaining about how he didn't have a dehumidifier. Yes, I need to have the basement for dehumidification. You know, dehumidifier. Yeah, he needed a dehumidifier because he lives in the basement at Brak's house on the Brak Show. So he complained about, I need a dehumidification, which again is dehumidifier. You know, dehumidifier is, you know, it makes it smell better. Yeah, it makes it smell better. Oftentimes you like to buy that at a pharmacy. You know, your Walgreens, your CVS, your Walmart, you know. Dehumidifier, you know. Dehumidification. Yeah, you know. There you go. There's your answer.